I never imagined I'd be checking the weather the morning of my wedding, only to find out my fiancée had run off with her ex standing at that altar, humiliated in front of everyone I knew. I swore I'd never trust again. Then her sister showed up at my door with lasagna and a brutal truth that would change everything. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but what if it tastes like something else entirely? What if the wrong sister said yes the first time? My name is Jay Floyd. I'm 34 years old, and until 6 months ago, I was a construction project manager for one of Denver's largest development firms. I spent my days building skyscrapers and planning my future with the woman I believed was my soulmate. Now I spend them wondering how I could have been so wrong about everything. The church was perfect that day. Light streamed through stained glass windows, casting colorful shadows across rows of white wooden pews filled with friends and family. My best friend Mark stood beside me at the altar, occasionally patting my shoulder and making jokes about how I was finally being domesticated. I barely heard him. All I could think about was Amber walking down that aisle toward me. 2 o'clock came, then 2:15. The string quartet had cycled through their repertoire twice. The whispers started around 2:20. By 2:30, my mother was squeezing my father's hand so tight his knuckles had turned white. Amber's parents kept checking their phones, confusion and embarrassment fighting for dominance on their faces. "I'm sure she's just having dress issues," Mark whispered, but the confidence in his voice was fading. At 2:35, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Every head in the church turned toward me as I pulled it out, hoping against hope. The text message was 3 lines. "I can't go through with this. I'm so sorry. Please don't try to find me." I read it twice, certain I'd misunderstood. Then a cold feeling spread through my chest as reality hit me like a sledgehammer. I showed the phone to Mark, whose face fell. "What do I do now?" I whispered, feeling like I was floating outside my body. "You tell them," he said quietly. I turned to face the room full of expectant faces, my throat suddenly dry. "I apologize to everyone who came today," I said, my voice sounding strangely steady to my own ears. "But there won't be a wedding. Amber isn't coming." The collective gasp seemed to suck all the oxygen from the room. People started whispering, some standing up, others looking away in secondhand embarrassment. Amber's mother burst into tears. Her father pulled out his phone, presumably trying to call her. As people began awkwardly filing out, offering condolences like I'd experienced a death, only one person actually approached me directly. Haley Vargas, Amber's younger sister, pushed through the departing crowd and grabbed both my hands in hers. "Jay, I'm so sorry," she said, her eyes filled with genuine concern, unlike the pitying glances from everyone else. "This is unforgivable. What can I do?" I couldn't answer her then. I just shook my head and walked out, leaving behind the flowers, the cake, and the life I thought I was about to begin. My bride had left me at the altar, and in that moment, I couldn't imagine ever recovering from the humiliation and heartbreak of that day. The week after the wedding, that wasn't is still a blur. I drove straight from the church to a liquor store, then locked myself in my apartment. Mark showed up that night, took one look at me sprawled on the couch with a half-empty bottle of whiskey, and promptly confiscated my car keys. "This isn't the way, man," he said, pouring the remaining liquor down the sink despite my protests. I snapped at him, but he didn't take the bait. He just ordered pizza, put on a football game, and sat with me in silence. By morning, reality was waiting for me with a pounding headache. I took a week off work, something I'd never done before. When I returned, I threw myself into the job with a vengeance, arriving earliest and leaving last. I lost 15 pounds that first month. The pitying looks from coworkers were almost worse than the heartbreak. Nobody had heard from Amber. She'd vanished, her social media accounts suddenly private. Her parents were as blindsided as I was. They'd called multiple times, her mother crying, her father gruffly apologizing for something that wasn't his fault. "She's made a terrible mistake, Jay," her father had said. "We thought of you as a son already." I couldn't bring myself to return their calls after a while. Every conversation just reopened wounds that were trying desperately to heal. Then one evening, about 3 weeks after the disaster, my doorbell rang. I almost didn't answer it. I'd been avoiding everyone, turning down concerned friends, ignoring my mother's increasingly worried texts. Haley Vargas stood there, holding a casserole dish and wearing a determined expression. "You look terrible," she said. pushing past me into the apartment. Thanks, I muttered, self-consciously running a hand through my unwashed hair. When's the last time you ate something that didn't come out of a microwave? She pulled the foil off the dish, releasing the smell of homemade lasagna. My stomach growled audibly. She moved around my kitchen with surprising familiarity, finding plates and forks. I stood there awkwardly, suddenly aware of my 3-day stubble and wrinkled sweatpants. Why are you here, Haley? I finally asked as she thrust a plate into my hands. She looked me straight in the eye, so much like her sister, yet completely different. Where Amber was all charming smiles and carefully crafted beauty, Haley was direct and natural. Because someone needs to make sure you don't waste away, she said. And because I have information about Amber that you deserve to know. My heart lurched. She's okay. I asked, hating that I still cared. Haley's expression hardened. She's fine. But what she did to you? There's more to the story, and you need to hear it. I sat across from Haley at my kitchen table, the lasagna half eaten as my appetite vanished. She was fidgeting with her napkin, avoiding my gaze. Whatever she was about to tell me, it wasn't good. Just say it, I finally said, bracing myself. Haley took a deep breath. Tyler Davis. That's why she left. The name hit me like a physical blow. Tyler was Amber's ex from before we met. The toxic relationship she claimed to have escaped. The guy she swore was behind her. What about him? My voice sounded hollow. She never stopped seeing him, Jay. Haley's eyes met mine, full of regret. The whole time you were together, she was still involved with him. I pushed away from the table. That's impossible. We lived together for over a year. We were planning a life. She was living a double life, Haley said quietly. Most of those business trips, she was with him. Those girls' nights, often with him. My mind raced through every suspicious moment I dismissed. Late-night texts she'd hide from me. The unexplained weekend conferences. How she'd sometimes come home with a different energy about her. I trusted her completely. Ignored the warning signs. How long have you known? I demanded, anger rising. I suspected for a while. Confirmed it a month before the wedding. Shame crossed her face. I confronted her. Told her she needed to come clean or call it off. She promised she would end things with Tyler. I laughed bitterly. Well, she certainly ended things with someone. I never thought she'd wait until the actual wedding day. Haley said, her voice breaking. I'm so sorry, Jay. I should have told you sooner. I slammed my fist against the counter, making us both jump. Damn right you should have. Do you have any idea what it's like standing there like an idiot while everyone looks at you with pity? Haley flinched but held her ground. You're right to be angry. I deserve it. My anger deflated as quickly as it had risen. It wasn't Haley's fault. She wasn't responsible for her sister's actions. Where is she now? I asked, not sure why I even cared. With him, last I heard. They left town together right after. She trailed off. After she dumped me at the altar, I finished flatly. Haley nodded. Miserable. Dad's furious. Mom's heartbroken. No one in the family can believe she did this. She hesitated. They were just as blindsided as you were. They loved you, Jay. Still do. I rubbed my face, suddenly exhausted. The truth was both devastating and liberating. At least now I knew it wasn't something I'd done or failed to do. Amber had been living a lie our entire relationship. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Why come here? Haley looked at me steadily. Because you deserve the truth. And because I couldn't stand seeing you blame yourself when she's the one who betrayed everything. I studied her, seeing sincerity in her eyes that I'd always thought I saw in Amber's. How had I been so wrong about one sister and never noticed the character of the other? Thank you, I said finally, for the truth. And the lasagna. A small smile touched her lips. It's the least I could do. No, I said, realizing something important. The least would have been nothing, like everyone else did. After the night Haley revealed the truth about Amber, something changed between us. She started stopping by regularly, usually with food, claiming she was in the neighborhood, or had made too much pasta. We both knew these were excuses, but I didn't call her on it. Truth was, I looked forward to her visits. Unlike others who walked on eggshells around me, Haley treated me normally. She didn't offer platitudes or try to set me up with her friends. She just provided company when the silence in my apartment grew too loud. You need to get a hobby, she announced one evening, surveying my Spartan living room. Something besides working yourself into the ground. What do you suggest? Knitting? Stamp collecting. I roll my eyes. How about rock climbing? She pulled out her phone, showing me a local gym. I go twice a week. It's great for getting out frustration. That's how I found myself the next day, strapped into a harness, staring up at a wall that seemed impossibly high. You sure about this? I asked as Haley expertly checked my equipment. Scare, Floyd. She grinned, challenging me. I'd always been competitive. Lead the way, Vargas. To my surprise, I loved it. The physical challenge, the focus required, the way it emptied my mind of everything except the next handhold. By the end, my muscles screamed, but my head felt clearer than it had in months. Told you, Haley said smugly as we left, both sweaty and exhausted. Rock climbing became our thing. Twice a week, we'd meet at the gym, then grab dinner after. I found myself looking forward to those evenings, planning my work schedule around them. Mark noticed the change in me. You seem better, he commented one day on the construction site. I am better. I realized it was true. The constant ache in my chest had dulled. I no longer checked my phone hoping for a message from Amber. I was sleeping again. One night, after climbing, devouring burgers at a local dive, Haley asked the question nobody else dared. Do you still love her? I considered deflecting, but owed her honesty. I loved who I thought she was, I said finally. But that person didn't exist. Haley nodded, understanding. Do you hate her? Tried to, I admitted. But hate takes energy I don't want to waste on her anymore. Good answer. She stole one of my fries. Too many people get stuck there. I watched her, realizing how much I'd come to value her friendship. There was something steadying about Haley, a genuineness Amber had always lacked. Must be weird for you, I said. Hanging out with your sister's ex-fiancé. She shrugged. Ex-almost brother-in-law, she corrected. And no, not weird. Unless. She hesitated. Unless it's weird for you, because I'm her sister. I shook my head immediately. You're nothing like her, Haley. That's become very clear. Her eyes met mine, something unspoken passing between us. For a brief moment, I felt a strange shift in the atmosphere. Then she smiled and stole another fry, breaking the tension. Good, because you still owe me a rematch on that blue route. As we walked to our cars later, Haley hesitated before getting into hers. Jay, she said, suddenly serious. I need you to know something. I'm not here out of pity or guilt. I genuinely enjoy spending time with you. The simple honesty in her voice caught me off guard. I know, I said. Same here. She nodded, relieved. See you Thursday then. Wouldn't miss it. Driving home, I realized something startling. For the first time since the wedding day, I had gone an entire evening without thinking about Amber at all. Instead, my thoughts had been filled with her sister, Haley's laugh, her competitive spirit, the way her eyes lit up when she reached the top of a difficult climb. I wasn't sure what that meant, but it felt like an important step forward. 2 months after the wedding, that wasn't. I was back in the rhythm of life. The Henderson project was ahead of schedule, largely due to my relentless work ethic. My boss had even hinted at a promotion. I dropped the weight I'd lost and gained muscle instead, thanks to rock climbing with Haley 3 times a week now. One Friday evening, I was halfway up a challenging route when I heard a familiar voice below. Still climbing like an amateur, Floyd? I looked down to see Mark grinning up at me. Beside him stood Amber's father, Robert Vargas. My concentration broke. My foot slipped, and I dangled from one hand 20 feet up. Instead of panicking, I controlled my breathing, found my grip, and continued climbing. I finished the route, then rappelled down to face them. Mr. Vargas, I said, extending my hand. Didn't expect to see you here. Call me Robert, son. And Haley mentioned you two climb here. His expression was apologetic. I hope it's all right that I came. Mark sensed the tension. I'll check out the equipment, he said, stepping away. Robert's weathered face showed strain. Haley tells me you're doing well. I'm glad. I nodded, unsure what to say. This man had almost been my father-in-law. I wanted to apologize again, he continued. What Amber did was unforgivable. It wasn't your fault, I said firmly. She's asked about you, he said cautiously. She and that worthless boyfriend are on the rocks. And suddenly she remembers what she threw away. A month ago, this would have affected me. Now, I felt nothing but pity for Amber. I've moved on, I said simply. Robert nodded approvingly. Good man. I told her as much. He hesitated. I also told her you've been spending time with Haley. That caught me off guard. We're friends, I said quickly. Are you? His eyes were knowing. Because my younger daughter lights up when she talks about you. And that's something I never saw with Amber. Before I could respond, Haley appeared, surprised to see her father. After he left, she fixed me with a suspicious look. What did he say to you? Nothing important, I lied. Ready to climb. Later that night, after dinner at our usual place, we walked to our cars in comfortable silence. Something had shifted between us, Robert's words echoing in my mind. Haley, I said suddenly, why do you really spend time with me? She stopped walking. What do you mean? Is it guilt? Pity? Obligation? Her face flushed. None of those things. Then what? She took a deep breath. I've always had feelings for you, Jay. Even when you were with Amber. The confession hung in the silence between us. I should have been shocked, but somehow I wasn't. You must think I'm horrible, she continued quickly, harboring feelings for my sister's fiancé. But I never acted on them. I respected your relationship. Then after what she did, she shook her head. I just wanted to be there for you. The feelings were secondary. I stepped closer to her. Why tell me now? Because I can't pretend anymore. And if that means we can't be friends. I cut her off. What if I don't want to be friends? Her face fell. I understand. What if I want more? I said quietly. Her eyes widened. Jay, don't say that unless you mean it. Not out of loneliness, or... I mean it, I said firmly. I've never been more certain. In that moment, standing in a dimly lit parking lot, I realized I'd been falling for Haley Vargas since the day she showed up at my door with lasagna and the truth. Taking that first step with Haley changed everything. We decided to take things slow, but there was no denying the chemistry between us. For the first few weeks, we kept our relationship private, still meeting for rock climbing and dinner, but now with a different energy between us. I was at the construction site one morning, reviewing blueprints with my team, when my phone buzzed with a text from Mark. Heads up, Amber's back in town. My stomach tightened, but not with longing, with dread. I'd moved forward and didn't want to step back into that mess. Later that afternoon, I was inspecting steel beams on the 14th floor when a site worker called up to me. Floyd, someone here to see you. I looked down and saw her, Amber, standing at the edge of the construction zone in designer heels, completely impractical for a job site. Even from this height, I could see heads turning. Amber always had that effect. I could have sent word I was busy. Instead, I secured my harness and rappelled down the side of the building, drawing admiring whistles from my crew. I unhooked my safety gear and walked toward her, aware of the muscle and confidence I'd gained in the months since she'd last seen me. Nice entrance, she said, attempting a smile. What do you want, Amber? No greeting, no warmth. Her smile faltered. Could we go somewhere and talk? Privately. I crossed my arms. Whatever you have to say, you can say here. She glanced uncomfortably at the workers, pretending not to listen. Jay, please. I made a horrible mistake. Tyler was... He was nothing like I remembered. Nothing like you. So he dumped you. I stated flatly. Her face flushed. It wasn't like that. I realized what I threw away. What we had was real. No, I said firmly. It wasn't. You were living a lie our entire relationship. I've changed, she insisted, stepping closer, touching my arm. I know what I want now. Who I want. I stepped back, breaking contact. I'm seeing someone. Her eyes widened. Already? Who? I hesitated, then decided honesty was best. Haley. Amber's face went through a rapid series of emotions. Shock, disbelief, anger. My sister. You're dating my sister. Yes, I said simply. She was after you the whole time, wasn't she? Amber's voice rose. Even when we were engaged. Anger surged through me. Unlike you. Haley respected our relationship. She never made a move until long after you abandoned me at the altar. You can't be serious about her, Amber scoffed. She's just... Haley. The dismissive way she spoke about her sister ignited something protective in me. Haley is honest, loyal, and real. Everything you pretended to be. She's twice the woman you are. Amber's face hardened. My parents will never accept this. Dating your ex-fiancé's sister? It's sick. Your father already knows, I countered. And unlike you, he cares about both his daughter's happiness. This isn't over, she snapped, turning to leave. It's been over since you sent that text, Amber. I called after her. You made your choice. Now I've made mine. I watched her stalk away, waiting for the pain or regret to hit. It never came. Instead, I felt relief, and certainty that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. That evening, I told Haley about Amber's visit. She listened quietly, then asked, "Are you sure about us? This will make things complicated with my family." I took her hand. "I've never been more sure of anything. Your family will understand. And if they don't, we'll face that together." She smiled, squeezing my hand. Together, then. In that moment, I knew that what had once seemed like the worst day of my life had actually set me on the path to finding something real and lasting, with the last person I ever expected. The weeks after confronting Amber flew by. Haley and I stopped pretending we were just friends, and our relationship deepened. We still climbed together, but now there were dinners at nice restaurants, weekend hikes in mountains, and nights spent talking until dawn. One evening as we relaxed on my couch, my phone buzzed with a text from Mark. "You two lovebirds up for dinner Friday? Sarah wants to meet the woman who finally made you smile again." Haley peered over my shoulder. "Your best friend's approval. That's serious business." Her tone was light, but I caught the question in her eyes. "You already have it," I assured her. "Mark thinks you're the best thing that ever happened to me." "And what do you think?" she asked, suddenly serious. I took her hand. "I think you saved me, not just from drowning in self-pity, but from settling for less than I deserve." She leaned against me. "We saved each other. I was always the responsible sister, the reliable one. With you, I feel like myself, not someone's afterthought." "You could never be an afterthought to me," I said, realizing how true it was. That night changed something between us. We stopped walking on eggshells around the past. Amber's name wasn't taboo anymore. She was just someone we both used to know. The Henderson project finished ahead of schedule, earning me a substantial bonus. My boss called me into his office on a Friday afternoon. "Outstanding work, Floyd," he said, sliding an envelope across his desk. "The clients were impressed with your management. The boards approved your promotion to senior project manager." "Thank you, sir." Pride swelled in my chest. "There's something else," he continued. "We're expanding to Seattle. Need someone to head up operations there. Better pay, more responsibility. It's yours if you want it." Seattle, a fresh start in a new city. 6 months ago, I would have jumped at the chance to leave behind the memories of Denver. Now, my first thought was Haley. "I'll need some time to think about it," I said. That evening, I took Haley to dinner at the restaurant where we had our first real date. After our meal, I told her about the promotion and the Seattle offer. "That's incredible, Jay," she said, genuinely happy for me. "You deserve it." "There's a catch," I admitted. "I'd have to move." Her smile faltered slightly. "Oh, when would you go?" "That depends," I said, reaching across the table for her hands. "On what?" "On whether you consider coming with me." Her eyes widened. "Jay, are you asking me to move to Seattle?" "I'm asking for more than that," I said, surprising myself with my certainty. I slid out of the booth and dropped to one knee, pulling out the small box I've been carrying for days. "I know it's fast. I know people will talk, but I've never been more sure of anything." I opened the box, revealing a simple emerald ring. "Haley Vargas, will you marry me?" The look on Haley's face when I proposed is something I'll never forget. Shock, joy, and then absolute certainty as she said yes, without hesitation. We celebrated with champagne, both of us giddy with the knowledge that we'd found something real in the aftermath of disaster. Reality hit the next morning when Haley said, "We need to tell my parents." My stomach dropped. Robert and Eleanor Vargas had almost been my in-laws once before. Now I was asking for their blessing to marry their other daughter just 6 months after being left at the altar by their first. "Together," I said firmly. We drove to their restaurant that Sunday before opening hours. Eleanor answered my knock, her eyes widening at the sight of us holding hands. "We need to talk to you and Dad," Haley said. Eleanor led us to a corner booth where Robert was doing paperwork. He looked up, his expression unreadable when he saw me. "Mr. and Mrs. Vargas," I began, feeling like I was 20 years old again. "I know this is unexpected." "Not entirely," Robert interrupted, exchanging a glance with his wife. I took a deep breath. "I've asked Haley to marry me, and she said yes. We want your blessing." Silence fell across the table. Eleanor looked between us, her brow furrowed. "This is quite sudden," she finally said. "Is it because of Amber?" Robert asked bluntly. "Some kind of revenge?" "Dad," Haley protested. I raised my hand. "It's a fair question." I met Robert's gaze directly. "Sir, What I felt for Amber wasn't real because she wasn't real with me. What Haley and I have is honest. It grew from friendship when I needed one most. There's no revenge here. Just two people who found each other in an unlikely way. Robert studied me, then turned to his daughter. And you're sure, Haley? This isn't about competing with your sister. I've never competed with Amber, Haley said firmly. You know that. I love Jay for who he is, not because of who once wanted him. Eleanor reached across the table, taking Haley's hand where the emerald ring glinted. It's beautiful, she admitted. Different from what Amber had. That was intentional, I explained. New start, new traditions. Robert sighed heavily. People will talk. Let them, I said. We know the truth. Amber will be hurt, Eleanor warned. Amber gave up her right to have opinions about my life when she left me at the altar, I stated, more firmly than I intended. To my surprise, Robert chuckled. Can't argue with that. He looked at his wife, some silent communication passing between them. Then he extended his hand to me. You're a good man, Jay. You always were. If my daughter loves you, and you love her, you have our blessing. Eleanor's approval came more slowly, but by the time we left, she had hugged us both and was already discussing potential wedding dates. In the car, Haley released a breath. That went better than I expected. Your father's a reasonable man, I said. He can see we're happy. She squeezed my hand. So, Seattle? If you want. Or we can stay. I'll turn down the promotion. She shook her head. No way. This is a fresh start for both of us. Besides, she grinned. I've always wanted to live somewhere it rains more than it snows. As we drove home, I marveled at how life had circled back around. 6 months ago, I thought my world had ended when I stood alone at the altar. Now I was planning a new life, a new home, and a new beginning with a woman who had been there all along. The weeks after our engagement passed in a whirlwind of preparations, accepting the Seattle position, house hunting online, and planning a small wedding ceremony before our move. We wanted something simple, just family and close friends, the opposite of the lavish event Amber had planned. 2 months isn't much time, Haley mused as we toured a small chapel. But I don't want to wait. Neither do I agreed, pulling her close. I've wasted enough time already. We'd settled on a June wedding, just before our July move to Seattle. Everything was falling into place, until Amber showed up at my apartment unannounced one evening when Haley was out with her mother looking at dresses. We need to talk, she said, pushing past me into the living room. She stopped short at the sight of moving boxes stacked against the wall. Going somewhere? She asked, her voice brittle. Seattle, I replied simply. New job. She absorbed this, then noticed the framed photo of Haley and me on the side table. Her face hardened. So it's true. You're really marrying my sister. Yes, I said, offering no explanation or apology. You can't possibly love her, Amber insisted. This is about getting back at me. I almost laughed. Not everything is about you, Amber. Hasn't been for months. What about what she did to me? She demanded. My own sister stealing my fiancé. My patience snapped. First, I'm not an object to be stolen. Second, you gave up any claim when you ran off with Tyler. And third, Haley didn't steal anything. She was honest and supportive when I needed it most. We had history, Jay, she said, her voice softening as she stepped closer. Years together. Are you really going to throw that away? You threw it away, I reminded her. On our wedding day. With a text message. She flinched. I made a mistake. No, I said firmly. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. What you did was a choice. A series of choices over years. You lied to me our entire relationship. And Haley is so perfect, she scoffed. Not perfect. Real. I moved toward the door, opening it pointedly. I'm marrying Haley because I love who she is, not who I want her to be. Something I never had with you. Amber's eyes flashed with hurt and anger. You'll regret this. When the novelty wears off. Goodbye, Amber, I said firmly. She paused at the threshold. Mom's heartbroken about this, you know. She'll never accept it. I smiled slightly. Actually, she's helping pick out wedding flowers tomorrow. Seems she's more concerned with her daughter's happiness than appearances. Maybe you could learn from that. As I closed the door on Amber's shocked face, I felt the final piece of my past click into place. I was ready to move forward, with Haley, to Seattle, and into a future built on honesty and real love. Our wedding day dawned clear and bright, nothing like the stormy day of my almost wedding with Amber. We chose a small mountain venue outside Denver, with the ceremony set for sunset. Standing in the small cabin preparing, I felt none of the anxiety that had plagued me the first time around. Mark adjusted my tie, grinning. "Nervous?" he asked. "Not even a little," I replied truthfully. "That's how you know," he said, clapping my shoulder. The ceremony was simple and perfect. Only 40 guests compared to the 200 Amber had invited. When Haley appeared at the end of the aisle, escorted by her father, she took my breath away. She wore a simple dress, her hair loose around her shoulders, looking nothing like the elaborate bride Amber had planned to be. My voice didn't waver as I recited my vows. Haley's eyes shone with unshed tears as she promised to stand by me through whatever life brought us. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, the small gathering erupted in genuine cheers. At the reception, Robert Vargas approached me, champagne in hand. "Never thought I'd have you as a son-in-law after all," he said, his expression warm. "Life takes unexpected turns," I replied. He nodded thoughtfully. "Haley told me about the confrontation with Amber. I want you to know, Eleanor and I couldn't be prouder of how you both handled it." "Thank you, sir. That means a lot. Take care of my daughter in Seattle," he said, suddenly gruff. "She's always been the strong one, but she needs someone solid. Someone who sees her value." "I do," I assured him. "Every day." Later, as Haley and I shared our first dance, I held her close, marveling at the journey that had brought us here. "Happy," she murmured against my chest. "More than I ever thought possible," I replied honestly. 1 week later, we drove our pack U-Haul into Seattle, rain greeting us as we pulled up to our new townhouse. The promotion came with a substantial raise, enough to afford a place with a view of Puget Sound in the distance. "Home sweet home," Haley said, twining her fingers with mine as we stood in our empty living room. That night, as we slept on a mattress on the floor surrounded by boxes, I reflected on the twists of fate that had led me here. 6 months earlier, I thought my life had ended when my bride left me at the altar. Instead, it had been the beginning of something genuine and lasting. Sometimes the worst moment of your life can lead to the best, if you're brave enough to keep your heart open when everything in you wants to shut it down. Haley taught me that, and every day with her confirms that sometimes life's cruelest disappointments are actually redirections to where you were meant to be all along. My bride left me at the altar, and it led me to marry her sister instead. It sounds like the setup for a bad joke, but it turned out to be the most honest love story I could have ever hoped for.